Microsoft says that their games just aren't as good as Sony's first-party games, and Sony says that Microsoft, in purchasing Activision and Call of Duty, is trying to make PlayStation compete on the same level that Nintendo does without really hardcore, mature-themed shooters that have this online component. The problem I have with that is that it seems like Microsoft isn't aware that Sony can compete right now in the way that Nintendo does. They've created IPs over the years, over each generation, the same way that Nintendo does. They're known for some of their characters and their IPs, like Kratos, like Ratchet and Clank, like Sly Cooper. The list goes on and on. They can go to the well of IP that they've created and bring them back. And their brand is strong, not because of Call of Duty, but because of the fact that they've done the work over the years to create these IPs. Microsoft hadn't done that since the original Xbox. They just stopped creating. I think back to Ed Freeze in an interview saying that he was told that with the Xbox, it was just about profitability over everything else. And he tried to explain that they needed to take a loss. They needed to create new IPs. They needed to create their own internal studios. And instead, Microsoft went a different direction and Ed Freeze left. Microsoft's in a position now where they want to force control. And I don't see them creating anything other than just division. So $79 or $80 billion for a publisher. How about just taking $1 billion and saying to Activision, hey, can we get Call of Duty in Game Pass? Why do we need to own a publisher? Why do we need to own games that are going to come to our platform anyway? And the answer is because we're not doing the work to create new content. We're not doing the work to create new IPs. Instead, what we're doing is we just decided, well, you know what? We haven't done the work over the years. And in order to play catch up, we're just going to open up our checkbook and buy everything that we possibly can. And the problem I have with that is that it doesn't lead me to believe that in the future they're going to be this creative company. And I can point to the initiative. When the initiative was first announced, it was said to be a quadruple A studio. There were tons of people. They talked about industry leaders from every field coming together, the best of the best, to create a brand new studio to work on new IP. And then it was a reboot of an old IP. And then it was another development studio partnering with them to co-develop the game. They weren't really a development studio. They just came up with ideas. I don't understand this. It would be like if Nintendo said, we're making the next Zelda game and we're partnering with Naughty Dog to co-develop it. It just doesn't happen. And that leads me to believe that instead of really focusing in on creativity and making something uniquely Xbox, they're just interested in turning Game Pass into Windows OS and strangling all the competition out so that, hey, everybody can have their platform, but you got to run the OS called Game Pass. I feel like by now Xbox should at least have some games that they've created internally that speak to the industry, that can go toe to toe with their closest competitor, Nintendo and PlayStation. Instead of saying our games and the ability of us to create is much less than our competitor, PlayStation, which is essentially what they said. They should be striving to create instead of purchase everything that they can possibly get their hands on. Put a studio together. You built the initiative. You talked about all this talent coming together. How about using half of that $80 billion to ensure that these people that work there have the tools they need and the ideas they need and the talent that they need, and create something new that is uniquely Xbox. I don't understand why we're still in this sort of holding pattern where, in order for Xbox to be successful, we have to own publishers that have created games over multiple generations, that have been on multiple systems for years in order for us to be somehow okay in the industry. You can't buy talent. You can't purchase creativity. No matter how much money you spend, if you don't have that creative spark, you're never going to have it. And nothing that you purchase is going to help you compete. And that's the problem that I have with Xbox lately. I don't see that creativity. I don't see that drive to create something that is just stellar. Instead, I see a real drive to just control everything through this sort of same template of, we have an OS called Windows, we're going to give it out for free, and then eventually we'll have a monopoly in the OS market, and we want to do that with Game Pass. We want to make sure that we have so much control over IPs that have been everywhere that if anybody wants those IPs to continue on their platform, they're going to have to force their consumers to subscribe to our operating system called Game Pass. I don't like that approach. It doesn't speak to creativity, and that's the word that I keep using. These are just my thoughts on things. I'm sure you have your own. Let me know in the comments section below. Like and subscribe. See you in the next one.